Welcome back to Beyond Revenue, where every Friday we explore the real leadership decisions behind scalable growth. I'm Michael Jäger, your host, and our focus is simple. We uncover how top operators actually navigate complexity, not theory, but lived experience. Today, we are joined by Petra Jenner, GM and SVP EMEA at Splunk. Petra has led some of the most complex enterprise business in Europe, previously serving as the CEO of Microsoft Austria and Switzerland. And you were holding multiple senior leadership roles at Salesforce. Petra, welcome to the show. It's a real pleasure to have the discussion today with you.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thanks for having me.
So, Petra, you have led organizations across Microsoft, Salesforce, now at Splunk. When you look at EMEA today, what makes it uniquely complex to scale?
I think the EMEA in general is actually, it's more than one region, right? It's actually two, or if not three regions in one, because you have Europe, and then you have the Middle East, and then you have Africa, and all of them are in different state when it gets to technology, right? And they are also in different investment stages, right? So, hence, it is absolutely important to really consider this as separate markets, and they are separate, but learn or leverage what you can learn from other markets, right? So that's one thing I would put on top of the agenda. So first of all, Europe is European Union, UK, right? And then to see where should we focus on, what are the important countries, right, where it makes sense to really double down. And this depends on the solutions, right, you provide. It is not a generic answer. And then in the Middle East, it also is important to see, is that something which is on top of the different countries in the Middle East? Is it on top of the agenda? Right? Does it make sense to potentially conquer KSA, or does it make sense to be present in some of these markets like Egypt, UAE, and so forth? And then Africa is a very different market, right? It's very diverse in itself. It's a continent, and the continent is also divided in north and south, right? South is very Western oriented, while the north also. But then you need to see where is also the portfolio lending potentially the best. So the key aspect to really drive an EMEA region to success is to really be very deep ingrained into what is your product, what is your value proposition, who is the solution serving for, and then determine what are the right markets. You should establish the business first, then do it right, and then expand.
Yeah, super interesting. So in short, it's much more complex than the name actually reveals, right? And the different nuances of not only the continents, but even then the individual countries gonna make it quite complex to navigate. At Splunk, you're operating in the intersection of AI, data, and security. So what's the biggest leadership challenge in that environment right now?
Let's say, first of all, it's a very exciting time to be in this space, right? AI is growing exponentially. Cybersecurity is directly linked to AI and creates a lot of traction right now. And I think all is about data. So I think the biggest challenge right now is to identify the top challenges for our clients, right? And I would say the biggest challenge for our clients is to stay digital resilient, or to become even digitally resilient. It sounds like, okay, what does that mean? But we can see right now that AI is growing, but it's also exposing companies much faster than before. And by saying that, and it's also in Rio, it is already happening, this means that companies, as they usually consider physical protection, they also need to protect their whole digital footprint. It goes from Do I see what's happening on my website? Do I understand what my team is doing? Are we using that, right? So that's the first challenge. And this means a lot of learning for my team, for me, for everybody being in this topic, because it is at rapid change. We need to learn also new skills on how we apply also AI for ourselves to become more productive. So it's, I would say, a very overwhelming and very demanding time to be in this place. But it's also very exciting.
Sure enough.
Everything happens right now in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even adding to this, right, I think, right, what the companies who are not so well structured, right, they fix the thing by a human layer somehow, right? So there's more or less the humans are the tissue connecting the topics which are not connected, or then just fixing it. And with now AI in place, it doesn't work. So the companies need to be so concentrated and focused on quality, on how they operate, in order to understand what they're doing, and then using the new tools or the new technology to actually scale with it.
Yes.
It's quite interesting.
It is. It's a very different approach. It also creates opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
the positive side of it, for sure.
Fair. So we just talked about the complexity of selling into EMEA, yeah, with the different markets, different continents. So what do you think about the balancing standardization versus local autonomy?
So I think there are things which should get standardized, like, let's say, I call it the operating model, right? Like that we all have an agreed way of working, meaning like you look into things like, how do we engage with customers? How do we approach customers? How do we provide offers? And how do we also conduct events, right? So that should have not a standardization, but it should be very similar, right? If you have, let's say, 20 versions of Splunk in the market, no one will realize that's one company. So it's really, it has nothing to do with brand management only, but it's also like customers are looking for cohesion, right? They don't want to have like 20 versions of a company. It also gives them security in their investment. So I think that's very important. Then, of course, on the process side, like in terms of, as I said earlier, the operating model. So how do we do pipelining, forecasting? How do we ensure that customers are also utilizing the solutions they're buying from us, right? And these are things which should get standardized. I don't mean normatized. I mean standardized. They should have a prescriptive way of doing things. It also gives security to the employees, right? Okay, if I do this right, this means I'm performing my job properly, right? Which is very important. And then autonomy. And I think autonomy is very important these days. Let's say if you're doing business, coming back to the Middle East, not every market is the same. The way you work in KSA is different than the way you work in, let's say, in Egypt, right? And you need to respect the local policies, the local way of doing business, right? And I don't mean legislation. I mean, what is the typical business acumen? It's very different. So, and that's what I mean. I think that is absolutely important. And this is so in order, the teams working in these markets, they need to have autonomy in order to determine, should I invest in this or should I invest in something else?
Yeah, fair enough. But I like how you place it in the two layers, right? With the general operating rhythm, the backbone on how we operate, and then the individualism on what is the cultural, or how do we culturally need to adapt to the local behaviors.
And I think if you allow both, right, this is really working well. And many people say, but how can you ensure how do you control the business, right? I know many leaders are very concerned on losing control. I would say it's relatively easy because there are KPIs which you need to meet. And whether you invest more in, let's say, in a certain market, or whether you prefer to invest like 10 headcounts more, right? The KPI which defines success is at the end of the day is like contribution margin, revenue growth, customer satisfaction, right? And this can be easily measured.
Absolutely.
So you
Fair
have
enough.
control, right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not, as a leader, you have control. Okay, do you know every single detail? No, but you look into the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and they will tell you, okay, no, this team obviously is doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that. So as the show is all about real tactics and learning, so let's jump into our 2 tactics which actually worked. So it would be really nice if you could give us in tactic number 1, a pain you saw, a tactic you structured, and maybe what was the outcome?
Yeah, so first of all, what I see very often and what I've discovered very often in my career is that it feels like people are a little bit running in cycles, right? And there is no final conclusion on that. So the first tactic, it's actually not a tactic, it's a strategy, but it's something I would highly recommend, is you need to create one common vision what success would look like, right? And what I usually do is taking the feedback from the leadership team together, okay, what would success look like? And everyone has a word to play, right? And everyone has a role to play in that. And then determine one, let's say, mission statement, right? For example, at Splunk, we've done that about 3.5 years ago. We defined a mission statement of what success looks like for us. And at the beginning, people said, okay, is that moving the needle? To be honest, it's as always, as I discovered that, it works. First, people are skeptical. Then you need to define some tactics and methods on how you measure the route to success. And I can say that in all the companies I've worked, applying this, it always worked because it brings people together for something which is bigger than themselves. And everyone wants to be part of a success story, right? And if you said, let's say, the goal is that we are market leading, we are surpassing a certain amount of revenue, or we are surpassing a certain level of customer satisfaction. If this is a common goal for the whole organization, I have noticed it works. It has worked in all organizations.
I really like it because it makes it tangible, right? So it makes it very clear what you're running, and it takes out the assumption, right, of the people having their own understanding why they're doing their things for.
Exactly. And it creates a bit of purpose, right, and sense. You can also build in elements like that we do some giving back for the society, or focus on specific talents, right, in the organization. This really activates the team big time.
Yeah, nice. What would be a second tactic or strategy? Strategy is fine, is fair enough, right? But what you applied where you saw a challenge within your organizations and then you structured and applied it?
I always look into areas where we could potentially scale faster or let's say get better towards the way we serve our customers. And I remember we had a certain part of our business, we had a decent investment in this part, and it was never really paying off. And I'm sure everyone has that, right? So what I've done is I said, okay, we'll end that. And we revisit what we're trying to accomplish and then rebuild it, completely rebuild it. So what my tactic is, always look into areas where you see, oh, I'm getting the results, but not to the degree I would like to get them to, and then be courageous. So I think it was a very courageous decision for me because nobody else around the globe has done that before. And I said, and this was related to how do we engage with partners, right? It was all about new customer acquisition. We felt that we were doing a good job, but we didn't. The KPIs were clearly speaking a different language. So then we decided, okay, we need to revisit the approach. And then we did revisit it in a way that we have leveraged the people who were there and combined it together with our business partners.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nice.
said, why can't we go together to identify potential new customers and then be very explicit about them and measure this also on this success? From my perspective, we have made progress. It's getting better. Is it fast enough? It's on the progression, right? So, but I would say if I look back, I think we are leading globally with this initiative, and now other geos are following, So I think overall, the tactic was double down on a specific market segment, just to summarize, identify that there should be more growth given the way the IT spend in this area, and then question how we go to market and revisit the go-to-market structure, and then develop a new way. And I think this was really working well so far.
Nice. I like the courageous part. What is the tactic where you said, look, you saw the problem, you applied it, you doubled down and it didn't work?
There are, of course, always failure is part of the business, right? I think I would say what I have seen is in my previous, one of my previous assignments, not at Splunk, we had the strong belief that to work with, let's say, system integrators in a special way was the success, right? Was this route to success, for example. Meaning like we could, partner with them, we would sell the software licenses and they would add then the services so that the customers get the whole solution out of the combination of the two. If I look back, we did invest, we did a lot of activities there. I would say this was too generic and too optimistic. And what I've learned there is just to say, we can serve this part of the business via a partner requires a deep understanding of what customers shall be served, right? And it also requires a very deep level of partnership. And if you spread yourself too broad, which we did at the time, then you do a lot of cherry picking, but you're not really getting the traction.
Fair enough.
So we course corrected this over time, but the original belief was if we work with all system integrators who are serving in this market, then we will get more traction with our customers. This was a complete wrong assumption.
Yeah.
It would have been probably better to have two and
then with
deep,
focus.
go deep rather than going broad with many.
Fair. So let me summarize what we've learned today from you, Petra. So in your tactic number one is, in order to really align an organization across multiple continents and markets, you need to really define in detail what success look like. Define a mission statement, what success look like, and even define maybe some KPIs. And the result is that everybody strives to one goal. It makes it tangible for the people why they're working and why they're progressing and where they're progressing to. And even it brings the people together because they believe in one common direction. Your tactic number two is, so if you're running a growth motion and it's going somehow okay, and even if the entire organization is focused on this growth motion, if you're not happy with the full results and the traction it's getting, be courageous, objectively pull the plug than going on in mediocrity, revisit the go-to-market motion, plan it in detail, and then execute on a new way instead of being non-courageous and just continue the way you have done. And on big decisions, sometimes it takes the courage to do so, and it's not so easy. But still, it was worth it. And the third option is, or the tactic which didn't work is, in the end, the devil lies in the details. So if you go on partner motions or in general motions, going broad with not real depth planning, it doesn't really bring the results you want. In order to achieve high-performing traction or high-performing results, and especially if you go in an indirect or partner motion, you rather focus on a little number of partners, go in very detail, be extremely aligned how you operate, and then roll together in a way where you can ensure quality and speed. Petra,
Yes.
anything to add here from your side?
No, I think you summarized it perfectly. So no, thank you. I think it's a good summary of what we've discussed earlier.
So Petra, thank you very much for your time, sharing your knowledge. I think it's extremely impressive what you have achieved so far in your career, and I think your current company is quite impressive to watch as well. So thank you very much for your time here.
Thank you, Michael.
So that's it for today's episode of Beyond Revenue. Obviously, a big thank you to you, Petra. I think we learned a lot, and it's quite interesting how you navigate through the complexity of the different markets. If this episode gave you a new perspective and you think one of your fellow leaders could learn from it, please share it with your network. New episode drops every Friday. Real operators, real lessons, no fluff. I'm Michael Jäger, your host, and see you next time.